Guys, happy Friday. We're back. This is TFL Talking Trucks. I am Andrei Smirnov, and with me is,
Nathan?
And
and we
Kim,
have,
MrTruck.com.
and today we also have a very special guest, Russ Rader from IIHS Institute or Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, correct?
That's right. Hi, everybody.
So usually this is more of a kind of a trucky Q&A with all of you guys, but today it's a special show. We want to start off with talking about safety items and specifically the Jeep Wrangler because the test results just recently came out, just what, a day ago, right, Russ? So we want to hit some of these questions. Russ, I wanted to
Correct.
start.
Yep.
Russ, I wanted to start with you kind of introducing IIHS and tell us, those people who don't know, a little bit more about it.
Yeah. Well, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety has been around since 1959. We are funded entirely by automobile insurance companies in North America with the mission of reducing the deaths, injuries, and property damage that result from motor vehicle crashes. So we do a lot of various kinds of research looking at how we can make the roads safer, that we can enact laws that work, that make that change how drivers behave on the road. And then the third leg is looking at the vehicle. How can we make the vehicle safer, knowing that crashes will happen?
Very cool. And what is your title or job with the IIHS?
I am a Senior Vice President for Communications, so my role is overseeing the group that puts together the video and all of the background material that we release to the public. We do crash tests to help consumers differentiate among vehicles and make shopping decisions that enable them to buy a vehicle that's safer. People assume that because a vehicle is for sale, that it must be safe. And in fact, there are differences in how vehicles that are for sale perform in safety tests, not only in crash tests, but also in how they perform in the crash avoidance technology space as well.
Hey, Russ, can you walk us through the different types of tests that are usually lined up for passenger vehicles?
Yes, well, we have we started doing crash testing back in the early 1990s with our moderate overlap frontal crash test. We started that test because we recognized that there was a space for us to push for changes in vehicles by pressuring the manufacturers through putting these tests out to the media that would go beyond what the government was requiring the manufacturers to do. And we've gradually added new tests over time. So the crash tests, the battery of crash tests that we do now include 3 frontal crash tests involving various parts of the front end of the vehicle. We conduct a side impact test that simulates an SUV or a pickup hitting the side of a vehicle. We do a roof strength test that looks at how well the safety cage would hold up in a rollover crash. And we also look at how well the seats and head restraints of a vehicle would perform if you were hit from behind in a moderate speed crash. And then, in addition to the crash tests, we have, over the last decade, gradually added more technology tests where we're looking at how well the vehicle performs to avoid a crash to begin with. So we're testing things like automatic emergency braking systems and rear brake systems. And we're likely to add new technology tests in the future as vehicles become more sophisticated in preventing crashes.
So you've done a rollover test on the Jeep, or is that one you've done on the Wrangler?
We don't do a physical rollover. Rather, we have the vehicle sitting upright and we do a roof strength test where we press a plate against the edge of the roof of the vehicle, and we measure essentially how much weight the vehicle could support if it flipped over on its roof. The idea being that you want the roof to be strong enough to support the vehicle's weight if it were to roll over, so it won't smush down onto the occupants. And we did that test on the current Wrangler, and it performed very well. It earned our top rating in the roof strength test.
Well, cool. Now, the Jeep is so transformable. You can take the doors off, takes the roof off. So you done tests with it all naked, or just always with the doors and the roof intact?
With the doors and the roof intact. The Wrangler, as you know, is essentially, able to be converted into a semi-convertible, but it does have a very strong roof rail, which is what is engaged in the roof crush machine that we use.
That's very interesting. So, so the new Wrangler, the JL generation, came out almost a couple years ago.
Right.
So finally, so there was some European tests done on European versions. I think the government organization did their own testing. Tell me about the process on this. It took a long time. What was the deal with the Wrangler?
Well, we have limited resources, so people don't always realize this, but the manufacturers don't give us vehicles to test. We go out and buy vehicles just like a consumer would off of dealer lots. So, we can't test every vehicle every year. We try to keep our test program in the heart of the consumer market. And sometimes we have vehicles that we just haven't gotten around to testing. And the new Wrangler was one of those. We recognized that we had a hole to fill by not having ratings for such a popular vehicle. So that's the reason that we tested the Wrangler.
And you do a lot of tests. I mean, how many vehicles do you test a year or a month?
Well, we maintain ratings on our website that consumers can look up for roughly 219 vehicles at the beginning of the year. But we obviously can't test 219 vehicles with all the battery of tests we have to do. So we try to pick groups of vehicles that fit together. In terms of the number of crash tests that we do, it's around 80 or so, 80 plus crash tests that we conduct each year. And then all the battery of technology tests that we do, that goes on throughout the year, and there are hundreds of those.
Okay. So guys, what I want to do is I want to kind of show this is a small overlap test that you guys did at IHS. And Russ, can you kind of explain what's going on here as far as like how it's set up,
Yeah.
how it's done?
Well, the small overlap test is our newest crash test. So it's a test involving just the left corner of the vehicle with just a small portion of the front end that actually hits that steel barrier. And the idea is to drive improvements in how the automakers are extending the crash protection features, the energy absorbing structures across the front of the vehicle. Because in that kind of very small overlap impact, where just that small portion of the left side of the vehicle is hitting the barrier, you can miss all of the energy absorbing structures that are kind of centered in the middle of the vehicle. And if that happens, all of the energy goes right back into the occupant compartment where the driver is sitting. And so this is a test that has been driving improvements in where that crash protection extends in the front of the vehicle. And also it's been driving improvements in how the manufacturers are strengthening the area right behind the engine, the firewall area, as you start to get into the occupant compartment, and also the pillar and the structure around the driver and the right front passenger.
And this is kind of a newer test, right? I mean, a few years ago, you didn't have
Yeah, it's a newer test. And what we do with our crash tests, we don't come up with these things willy-nilly. We look very carefully, our researchers look very carefully at the real world crashes that where we have a lot of data from the federal government about how people are being injured and killed in crashes in the real world, and we can look at the types of crashes that they're being injured in. And what we try to do is replicate those crashes in the lab in order to drive improvements to protect people in those kinds of crashes. And this was an area where we saw a gap where these small overlap crashes were not being covered by any of the crash test programs that were currently being done in the United States.
Gotcha.
Wow, it looks like your testing is very important to the consumers. You learn a lot about that. Now, this interesting when it rolled over. This is like the first vehicle that's rolled over, I think, in your test. But when it rolled over, the front tire got out of the way, which I was glad to see, and a lot of the driver's compartment was actually intact and in good shape. It just rolled over on its side, and that might not be such a big deal. But here in the mountains, if that were to happen, it would either go into the wrong traffic lane or it goes through the side rail and might roll down the mountain. So that'd be kind of weird. But yeah, that's very interesting. I'm glad you guys do these tests.
And this is one of those situations that the Wrangler did very well in the part of this test that we are focused on and measuring. We're looking at things like the structural performance of the vehicle, injury measures on the driver dummy, the forces that would be put on a real driver in a crash of this severity. And the Wrangler did very well, earning high ratings in all of those different segments that we measure in the test. However, we had to look at what happened after the impact and recognize that if a rollover happens after a frontal crash, it's not a good thing.
Yeah,
and that's why, yep.
No, I just wanted to quickly go over the how it performed overall, the
Yeah.
new Wrangler. So small overlap front got a marginal rating, and we already discussed that. But it got good marks, and the good mark is the highest mark. The moderate overlap front got good mark. The side crash was good. The roof strength was good, like you said. Head restraints and seats, good. The headlights got a poor rating.
Right.
I want to ask you about the headlight test, but then also front crash prevention technologies like the front collision prevention.
Yep.
Also good.
Yep.
And latch seat anchors also good. So it scored really highly on a lot of these segments.
Yes, it did. And as you mentioned, in the small overlap test, the driver's side small overlap test, in all of the normal metrics that we measure, it did very well, earning good ratings in those categories. The reason it was downgraded to marginal is because of what happened after the impact with the rollover, because that introduces new risks that that they aren't measured in this test, but if they happen in the real world, it can be a serious problem.
What about the headlight test? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah. Headlights is also a newer area that we are examining, rating how well, not only how well the headlights illuminate the road, how much light, how far the vehicle can throw light down the road so that a driver at night would be able to see and recognize a hazard in time to take action. We also measure whether the vehicle produces excessive glare for oncoming drivers. So a vehicle can have headlights that illuminate the road well, but it can also be downgraded if it produces too much glare for oncoming drivers. So in this case, the headlight systems available on the Wrangler are rated poor.
And I want to switch gears, Mr. Truck and Nathan. I want to discuss a little bit more about trucks. Russ, you test mid-size trucks, you test full-size trucks, including like the F-150s, the Ram 1500 Chevrolets. Talk about what did you do recently with trucks specifically?
You mean in terms of testing of pickups or SUVs or?
Yeah, mostly pickup trucks. I mean, so we did several stories based on you guys' data because I think this is important for consumers, people who are looking to buy pickup trucks as well.
Yeah.
For example, the latest mid-size segment, the Jeep Gladiator is currently not rated, correct? Hasn't been done yet.
Right. We are looking at the Gladiator. We expect to test that eventually. We're in the situation currently where our lab is closed because of the pandemic. So hopefully in the near future, we'll be reopening our lab and resume crash testing. And the Gladiator is the vehicle that we want to look at. I think that there are cases where we can apply ratings for one vehicle to a vehicle that is essentially its twin, but we don't apply ratings from one category of vehicle, one class of vehicle over to another. So we can't apply the Wrangler's performance to the Gladiator. We will have to test that separately. But we try to stay with the popular vehicles that people are buying.
Yeah, being that the Gladiator has a different platform that's substantially heavier and longer than the Wrangler, I'd imagine that's yet another part of that whole puzzle too. You really can't compare the two, so it's entirely possible that that vehicle may behave differently when it's crash tested.
Yeah, it is entirely possible. It is one of those things where a weight can have a substantial effect on you can't apply principles for lighter ones, and you see that with some of the heavy pickups that we've tested. Some of those have done very well.
I have one last question. I know you're funded by the insurance companies.
Yep.
Your research. Now, you don't give me exact number. I'm just kind of curious because of this rollover on this Wrangler. Even though it had good scores on so many other things, just basically the headlight and rolling over in that test you did. Do you know how much that would present as a premium for the insurance companies? Whether they're going to surcharge those Jeeps, 10%, 5%, or how does that translate to the real world?
Well, one of the things to keep in mind about insurance is that the crash tests themselves don't have a big effect in insurance rates per se. And I say that because one of the big things that insurers pay for is damage to vehicles. So a lot of what you pay for in your insurance has to do with how costly it is to repair a vehicle after it crashes, and also how often it crashes and results in insurance claims. So crash tests indirectly have something to do with it, but it's not a big factor. It's not as big as things like damageability.
That's a very interesting question. Yeah.
All right.
And insurance also obviously it involves lots of things, including who you are and where you live and all of those kinds of things. But we're providing the crash tests as a way for consumers to look at, give them comparative information about shopping. We also do publish data on insurance claims as well for vehicles, so that you can see how vehicles stack up and rank in terms of things like collision claims or injury claims. And that can give you an idea of how a vehicle is doing in the real world and whether some vehicles may cost you more to insure than others.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Hey, Russ, I have one final question from me, at least, about the Jeep that you guys you use several, obviously, in your crash tests. Was it the diesel or was it the V6 gas engine?
I would have to check that. We usually try to purchase vehicles that are commonly equipped as people would buy them, including what would be the most popular engine option.
That would most likely be the gas V6. And only curious because the diesel is a great deal heavier. So just mild curiosity.
Yeah, cool. And my last question, Russ, I know you probably have to go soon, but trucks and pickup trucks, and this is our Friday show is more truck oriented, are becoming more popular in general, right? And the recent sales study data shows that pickup trucks are now outpacing cars.
Yeah.
Not SUVs. SUVs are still there,
Yep.
and crossovers, but the trucks are now outpacing cars
Yep.
in sales. And that has to do with many factors. You know, some manufacturers are divesting in cars, and of course, the virus lockdowns.
Yep.
But are you going to have more focus on trucks going forward, especially bigger and heavier trucks?
Well, we definitely will have a bigger focus on light trucks because that's where the sales are moving, and that's already been the case in terms of our testing program, moving more toward SUVs and pickup trucks. We typically don't test the very largest and heaviest in the SUV and pickup world. And that's mainly because, again, for resources purposes, a very large, heavy vehicle already starts with a high level of safety. So there wouldn't be a lot of information to glean from testing those really heavy vehicles. So, we'll definitely keep testing the popular sellers, but we don't have any plans to test the really big guys.
Oh, I knew it. I knew it. A 110 dually, safest truck you can buy. Yeah.
There we go.
Well, Russ, thank you very much for joining us on this special show.
Sure, I really enjoyed it, and this is a great opportunity to, help people understand a little bit more about what we do and how this testing can help people in their shopping decisions.
And the website, of course, is iihs.org, correct?
You got it. And you can see all the details for the Jeep Wrangler as well as all the other vehicles we've tested there, including older vehicles that we've tested in past years that you may be considering for a used vehicle.
Awesome. That's really cool. Well, thank you, Russ.
Thank you so much, Russ. We really appreciate it.
That was great.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Happy to do it.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks. So guys, thank you for staying with us. And I saw a lot of the comments and questions that you guys had. And I also wanted, Nathan and Mr. Chuck, I wanted to bring up this poll that we ran on our channel, TFL Now. And this is in the community page. We posed the question whether this new test data on the Wrangler would affect people's decision. So would you think of the Jeep Wrangler differently now that you know this additional test results, or it wouldn't affect your decision and you would still buy one as if you didn't know this data? And already, I'm looking at the page right now, we have over 1,000 votes, and this is just several hours, and 55% of the responders, you guys who voted, said, yes, you're looking at the Jeep differently now. And 45% said, no, I see it the same.
I have a reason for that, because at 55%, a lot of them were looking at a four-door Jeep Wrangler as a family hauler. These are family people, in many cases, who were considering, hey, what a cool off-road vehicle that can haul my family around. They weren't really thinking about the fact that they're getting a vehicle with a straight axle in the front that has a really high center of gravity, and it's built very differently than any other car out there. And I'm not going against Jeep. I'm not going for Jeep. This is just the facts of life. And my personal opinion is when they saw that, they were alarmed that, you know, it's not a Volvo or some other vehicle in terms of super crash worthiness. The thing is that, and I want to circle back to this, that Jeep did really well in almost every, you know, factor that it could have done well in. You know, I'm actually impressed with the scores. But the bottom line is, it's gonna, if it tips over in that type of accident, you need to keep that in mind if you're somebody who's serious about it. Now, look, if you're going to go off road, there's very few vehicles that can compete. But at the same time, if you're not, I don't know, maybe that's where you should reconsider.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Like me, I don't think it's much of a trailer twin vehicle. I mean, especially the two-door. The four-door is much more stable. But yeah, there's a lot of it's interesting, and it did do well in most of the tests. I was impressed by, you know, after it rolled over, the passenger dummy, he looked like he was pretty good shape. The wheel got out of the way like he used to come into the cabin. But yeah, he actually, as long as he didn't fly off the mountain or hit ongoing traffic, it was actually pretty good. Oh, just had that one fault, just falling over.
And there's some comments in the chat room. So guys, thank you once again for your comments, questions, feedback. There's a couple comments that I saw repeating, is that somebody said that the Wrangler wanted just to climb the wall. That's what it does. So that's a kind of a nice light comment. And also, I think what's happening here is it's really quite interesting, is because when you look at the entire mid-size pickup truck segment, right? And this is the Frontier, the GM trucks, right? The Colorado Canyon, you have the Tacoma, you have the Ranger, you have even the Honda Ridgeline. They're all front independent suspension, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the first times we're actually seeing a front solid axle actually go through something like this.
And yeah, did the axle had anything to do with the way it reacted, or I mean?
I personally, I think it do. I can't speak today. I thought it did. If you look, it looks like at the barrier. Andre, can you show that again while I'm talking? If you look at the barrier, the way it hits, it definitely looks like the axle takes a lot of that abuse. Now we're talking about a solid axle, so we're not talking about something that deforms. Go ahead.
Yeah, up here.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, can you show the video? Are you able to put that into a loop, or at least just one time? Because if you swatch it, you're going to see that the axle is here a little bit more. Sorry, guys, we're trying some new tech here. Here we go. Look at that. So that axle is driving down. The other side is rising up before that section pulls, right? Mm-hmm. This is what I'm talking about with that solid axle. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Personally speaking, I'd still buy the damn thing. But if you are hitting something with a solid axle, part of it isn't deforming. Maybe the whole thing is staying as one and lifting up another side, kind of acting like a lever. So that is the way I see it, just looking at this one video.
Well, in one shot, it looks like that wheel broke clear to the outside, so it hardly even attached to the axle. But yeah, that might have shot it down, part of what happened there. But yeah, this makes me really worry about that Suzuki Samurai you drive with Nate.
That thing is a tank. I can take it. I'm actually battening it down with the heavy winds that are outside right now.
Oh my gosh, we had some heavy winds this last couple days.
Yes, 70 miles an hour in the bunker.
Now, by the way, guys, another thing that people were talking about in the chat, sorry, guys, I was trying to read your chats on my phone while we were going through the interview. I wasn't falling asleep, I promise. So one thing I did notice is a few people were asking about the tire size, because there are a variety of different tire sizes available with the Wrangler. Now, if you look at that video clip over Andre's shoulder, it looks like that is not the Rubicon.
Correct.
And I mean, it would really suck if they had to go buy a bunch of Rubicons. They're a lot more expensive, you know, when it's out of wallet. But it is also, those look like the standard off-road tires. Am I right, Andre?
Yeah, and I think, so the Rubicon has a 33-inch tall tire.
Right.
It looks just a step below it. So I think it's either a 32 or a 31, basically like a Wrangler Sport would be.
They do look like a 31 to me just from here.
Yeah, and also this did not have that major steel bumper with a winch, right? It had more of a plastic covered bumper. So, but we're not, I mean, at least I'm not a scientist who can study every element of
none of us are
steel and how this vehicle performed. But what I was pleasantly, the pleasant thing about this is that the roof strength was very strong.
Yeah, that's good.
I was really worried about this going into it because, when you take off, either the doors or maybe even folding the windshield, but I think the windshield had to stay up for this test where they, squeeze it. They basically have a giant plate squeezing it and measuring the force it takes and how the structure reacts to it. But it got a good result on that test.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Well, it goes to show that the doors and that rear section are not necessarily structural. The structure is actually that bar that goes over the top. It's not a roll bar, but it is something that is structural. And they built it specifically so they could do well on this crush test. And, it's what's alarming is there are videos out there of people rolling these things down massive hills and getting squashed. But that's usually because they're falling down a 300-foot hill and landing on the roof. This is something that is in a car accident. If it goes up and over onto its roof, how will it survive under its own weight?
Yeah, and this is a body on frame vehicle too, which to me means it could be stronger. The crush zones are a little different on it, but it had good weight on the bottom of this vehicle. You figure the frame, the transmission, the engine, differentials, it wasn't like a high center of gravity vehicle.
Right. And Joker, one of the people in the chat room is asking, does this mean that the Jeep Gladiator will have the same crash results? No.
No. We actually talked about this, Joker, right before our guest left, and it's entirely possible it could be very different results. Bear in mind that the Gladiator is built on a unique frame. It's longer, it's heavier, it's a beefier platform altogether, and he even mentioned that heavier trucks tend to do very well in these tests. So it's possible that the Gladiator may have a different score. It may do the same thing. Once again, we're not scientists, but he did say that once things calm down, the virus mellows out, and they're able to get back in there, one of the trucks they have on the list that they're going to be testing will be the Gladiator.
Yeah, and there's a question from Wyatt. Thank you, Nathan. Did we sell the 88 Comanche, the Jeep Comanche truck? Yes, we did.
Oh, man, I wanted that truck.
No, you didn't.
I did too.
What are you going to do with it? You can't even hang truck nuts off the back of it.
Oh, I could? Yes, I could. It's got a bumper. I could put a roll bar in it. I could haul people, or I could haul Hooters around in that thing.
Owls. I'm sure you talk about
yes,
owls.
We do have owls and eagles out here. We can haul all that in the back of that Comanche. No, I like the Comanche. Yeah, that was a cool truck. I'm not wild about the transmission, but it was a cool look.
Yeah, it was a cool little truck. We'll probably have a couple videos coming out about the sale and everything else that was attached to it. And there are a lot of really cool details that are coming in the near future about that sale.
Yeah, Mr. Truck, we had another question. Should we hit some of the prepared questions really quick?
Yeah, guys, we're going to move on from here.
We've got a half hour to go. Let's get them all in here.
Mr. Truck, your video disappeared for me, at least.
That's okay. That's
let's see. Let's see. Is it finding me yet?
I'm okay with this.
Oh, man.
I'm okay too.
Here we go. I got buttons. I'll push some buttons.
Oh, please don't push.
There we go.
Yeah, I try to get the glare off the laptop when I pull it down a little too far. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, ask me anything. I'll tell you anything.
What's the price of rice? No, never mind. There's a question that came in about heavy duty trucks, and basically it boils down to what's better in the 3/4 ton segment or the heavier truck segment. Is it the GMC Sierra? Specifically AT4 or maybe even the Denali version. They're kind of similar in some ways, or the Ford Tremor.
Well, yeah, I read that, and he was talking about the steering. He didn't like the steering of the Tremor. And I love all those Super Duties this year because they've got that overlay electric motor on the steering shaft. And to me, it steered like a rack and pinion, nice and tight, like a half-ton does. So I was tickled with them. So I don't know. I mean, I know that overlay system is different at, say, 45 versus 70 miles an hour. It's different if it's in tow mode. You may want to put it in tow haul mode, see if it stiffens up. I'm not sure I quite understand what he was saying about how it didn't steer right, but I love the new steering. So I'm having a whole different experience with it. So, and you guys drove the Tremor on the highway more than I did because you had it for months. So what did you guys think? Did you find a flaw in the way the trimmer steered at 250?
No, I think it was great. It was very stable. But when I drove, so I drove both trucks a fair amount. And I know at least I drove the Chevy 2500 Silverado Duramax, and I drove the Tremor diesel as well. And one thing I noted about the GM truck, the Silverado in this case, it was just rock solid on the highway, no matter what a side wind came. I think it was an artifact of it had a longer frame now for this generation, and it just felt really, really great as far as stability. And I felt kind of the same way in the new Tremor too. These trucks weigh about 8,000 pounds. And the latest steering systems and the suspension systems are so good. I'm not talking about bumps. Yes, sometimes you can feel a bump still, but I'm just talking about stability where you just kind of, it doesn't, go side to side as much.
Yeah, GM's, it's a bigger truck. It's wider, it's longer, it's taller. You would think that it would handle better. To me, I think the Ford's a softer ride than the GM, but that's another thing. The steering is not something I don't see the same things he was talking about. But yeah, no, I mean, they're both good trucks, and the Tremor's new kid on the block is probably going to cost you, well, I don't know if it won't cost you more than AT4, one of those Denali's, but yeah.
Hey, Andre, there's a quick question I wanted to cover from Daily Driven H2. He asks, TFL, will you guys get the new electric Hummer EV when it's out? I don't know if he's referring to buying one or testing one. We will definitely test it, but buying one, I think Andre's thinking about it.
So first of all, it should come out at the end of 2021, right?
That's for now.
We have time to save up, right? So I'm really, first of all, when it debuts, we'll be there. I'm sure all of us, will be really interested in everything it has, and we'll do the videos for you guys. And then when it's actually on sale, it's supposed to be a premium vehicle, right? So it's not going to be a base entry level truck. And I don't know exactly how much it's going to cost, but yeah, I would be tempted. I might want to buy it and actually study it and have it long term.
Well, Andre, this is your chance to take your H2 and electrify it. Stick some batteries in it. Do all that fun stuff. Get some electric motors. We'll help you.
Yeah, I got a busted dryer in my garage. That dryer motor is really small and powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Truck, you might have a point, because, our friends at Transwest, right?
Yeah, right.
They use a lot of lithium-ion batteries.
Yes.
For the trailers, right?
Yes.
So I can just buy, I don't know, 10 of 20 of them, stick it in the and have my own vehicle.
I think you should do it. Put a great big electric motor off of an irrigation pump, couple them, and you'd have it. I mean, they're about the size of your back seat, but that would be awesome.
We actually have extra motors in the Tesla Model X we still have. I mean, Roman won't miss one or two.
Hey, yeah, there's cool. That's an idea. They're all ready to go on an axle. Just steal the whole axle.
I'm sure me in my garage can do better than a $2 billion engineer program at General Motors, Tesla, or anybody else.
Well, you guys many degrees as they do. You got masters and misses and all kinds of stuff.
How many misses? No, I'm married.
Let's get to some questions.
Yeah, dude. Do you see anything else in the chat room?
There's a lot of guys who are still commenting on the Jeep. One thing I wanted to point out, I did ask the engineer about whether or not they tested the Wrangler with the diesel versus the V6, and I'm pretty damn sure that those are all V6s. He said they go with the most popular choice, which makes sense. They're going to sell a lot more of the 3-liter V6. The thing is, 3.6 liter V6, whatever. Anyway, the point is that the diesel is a lot heavier. I would be curious to see if that made a difference in the crash test, but it's not one of those things that I think we're going to see happen anytime soon.
Well, it's interesting because the IHS, they buy their own vehicles, and Russ did tell us that, and that's very important. And obviously they have to make, financially sound decisions, not just buying, $65,000 vehicles all the time.
Right.
So it makes sense that they would buy the most popular and also kind of the one that's configured the way most people would buy it.
By the way, they are required to crush their vehicles when they're done testing them. Even some of the minor crash test vehicles, components are not allowed to be sold off the vehicle or anything like that. It has to be crushed and killed.
I'm sure.
Liability issues.
Yeah, exactly. Liability and thing. And why don't they got 200-300 insurance companies, or who pays the bills? I mean, they should have a big pile of money there. I'd like to see them test a 1-ton dually just for the hell of it. That would be neat.
It would be really cool to see what they could do with heavy duty trucks. I mean,
yeah,
you know, they're so popular, they really should test them. But I think that a lot of automakers would be resistant to that.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of forces involved in that, but it sounds like a great service he did. I mean, there's so much research you can do on their website and figure out what you're doing, along with the other research you want to do on your truck, on axles and engines and everything else. So no, I mean, that's so neat about the internet is you can really figure stuff out now and make great decisions, not just have some salesman follow you around pushing you into something.
Right, and you can also go to mrtruck.com and tfltruck.com and see a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, really good test that TFL Truck does. Now, did you see the question from Jeff Collins? He was talking about an older EcoBoost versus something else on there.
Yeah. But before we go to Jeff's question, there's another question from Eric Wilkins. And Mr. Truck, this is kind of, you might know this. He said, I have a 2016 Ford F-150 with a 36-gallon tank. Do you know if it can be upgraded to 60 gallons? Well, you have a very similar truck, right, Mr. Truck?
Yeah, mine came in at 36. And yeah, I mean, Transfer Flow, all those companies make bigger tanks. I mean, my last 250, I put a 60-gallon tank on. But yeah, you can do all that if there's room. But that's always the problem is you got the axle, you got the transfer case. There's only so much room between those two to stick a tank. So that's what determines it.
But I know for a fact that there is a Mr. Truck video out there where you're talking about an external fuel tank and toolbox, and you go through it ad nauseum in your video. Am I correct?
Ad nauseum? Is that a real term? Yeah, exactly. That's the guys from California. What in the world is their name? They're a really good company. But then, yeah, you can get a 100-gallon tank if you put it in the bed. I was talking about underneath there, so you can take up any space. But yeah, if you want to do a transfer tank, toolbox, dog boxes, all that can be with those folks. Yeah, in California, that's really, really good. I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, you're right. If you put it in the bed, you can put whatever size you want.
Although,
that's cool. And guys, on the farm.
Before you do that, make sure it's legal in your state, because it's not legal in all states just to go and throw a tank in the bed and put a funnel to your tank. So just, make sure it's legal.
Right. And they have a pump on them, but yeah, mostly that's for diesels. I'm not sure it's legal to do that with gas engines back
in
there.
some states it is.
Yeah. So that's different too. But yeah, that's
cool. Before we go to the next question, Mr. Truck, but my question is, I mean, isn't 36 gallons enough? I mean, in your experience towing and driving a lot, are you getting decent range with 36?
Yeah, exactly. That's just one guy was talking about. He's trying to get his range up to 700 miles. Well, in my 36-gallon tank, if I'm getting 23 with cruise control, 70 miles an hour going to Oklahoma, I can get 700 miles out of my tank. So that's what's really cool is it depends on how you drive. You get a vehicle like this. I've got a Rebel out here with a diesel in it. My goodness, that thing, I think that's got like a 33-gallon tank. And it started off with 700 miles of range when I first got it. So yeah, there's a lot of ways of doing that. And especially, with the diesel, you're going to get a lot better fuel mileage. I mean, if you get, say, an AT4, get one of those Chevys with that inline 6.3 liter. And I don't know, their biggest tank probably goes to like 26 or something. But you put a big tank in any of those diesels, it'll be a big deal. But yeah, my 153 did the 3.5 EcoBoost will do really well, 36 gallons. So I don't know. I mean, it depends. It's a half ton. You're not going to be towing big trailers, but if you're still pulling 11,000-pound trailer cross country a lot, then yeah, you need all the fuel you can find. So you can buy all your fuel in like Missouri or Texas or Oklahoma. That's a big difference. And that's when I got bigger tanks, is because I was pulling trailers all across the country, and I never wanted to buy fuel in California. So you always had to find those places. And now, with your Siri or your XM radio, it'll tell you where all the stations are and what the fuel price is. I mean, right next door to me, 15 miles away, I was buying it for 99 cents. So yeah, you can pay for those extra tanks that way.
Absolutely. Chase Younggreen is in the chat room. Hey, Chase, thank you for joining. And of course, a lot of other friends of the show. Thank you. Chase is, I think he's asking about Dodgezilla. What happened to that?
Oh, that's in reference to somebody else was saying that Mr. Truck only buys Ford, which, by the way, he doesn't. I know for a fact he's had Chevys and Dodges, and one of them mentioned Dodgezilla. He even had a Chevy Love, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a Chevy Love. I had a Chevy Dually. I've had a Chevy flare side, or not flare side, step side. I've had Fords, Toyotas. I mean, I had a Toyota, for crying out loud. I had a Toyota. The only thing I haven't had is a Honda Ridgeline. That's when we.
I was about to say Honda Ridgeline. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I get that next week. I get an Expedition and a Honda Ridgeline the same week. That's like the big and the little one. We'll see what I can do. We'll do a tug of war.
I want you to tell the Expedition with the Ridgeline.
Yeah, yeah. I'll let the back axles drag on the end of the trailer, otherwise I'll be over limit. But yeah, I want to do a tug of war with those two, the Beast and the Beauty and the Beast.
There you go. I'll pay to watch that.
That would be cool.
Yeah, the Fuel Box is named that company out of California, Fuel Box. Yeah, that is cool. I love those big tanks. I mean, I've done several of them in my trucks. The 36-gallon one now, I don't need one in my 150. I mean, as long as I can make it to Oklahoma, I'm good.
Well, I want to point out something real quick, Mr. Truck. That video, I only know about it because there's a friend of mine who bought a Dodge Dakota, a used one, needed more range, bought that box after watching your video, put it on her truck, and I think she had a 30-gallon tank, and then there was a pump and also a toolbox, all integrated into one thing.
Right.
And she absolutely adores it, and she's able to go about 700 miles between stops. And this is with the 318 Dodge Durango or Dakota, not Durango, Dakota.
Yeah, it's cool. They make dog boxes. Yeah, they're very well made. You know, you can get them covered with bed liner. You can get all kinds of stuff with them. But yeah, that's accessories are fun. That's what's cool about trucks is you can do so many things to them. You know, what the hell are you gonna do with a car? Are you gonna put different doors on? I mean, what is there to do with a car? But a truck is something you can accessorize the hell out of. You can lift kit it, you can tire it, you can do anything you can imagine you can do to a truck. Why would anybody buy a car?
I can lift my Chevy Camaro too. I can lift it. I can lift
you have
that
a Chevy
thing.
Camaro?
I don't.
Oh. But you have a little Volvo diesel thing, whatever it's called.
Oh, it's Volkswagen.
Yeah, that's what it is. Volkswagen.
Stingray Z says Chevy Love was a cool truck. Speaking of Chevy Loves, there's another mini truck or a tiny truck might be coming from Ford. And this is supposed to be, we think it's going to be called the Maverick.
That's right. If this happens, rumor has it will be based on the Ford Bronco Sport, not the Ford Bronco, which is a truck, basically Ranger, but a Ford Bronco Sport, which is based on the Ford Escape platform. And that vehicle, if it does happen, will slot underneath the Ford Ranger, both in price and capability.
You know, that's cool because of the price of trucks and everything. You got to keep putting smaller ones in there so people who just need a truck part-time or better fuel mileage. And I hope that those little mini trucks come out with really good fuel mileage because the midsize, they're not breaking any records on fuel, and they used to. They used to back when we had mini trucks.
Mr. Truck, there's a question from Joey's cleaning lady. Mr. Truck has never owned a car. Is that true?
Oh, no, I used to buy my wife a new car every 3 years until she had her last crash, and then, she passed away. But, I've owned probably 3 Mustangs. I mean, I was a kid once. I had to use a backseat occasionally. So I had cars. I mean, I had a Torino. I've had, good gosh, I've had a lot of stuff. And I sold cars and trucks for 10 years. So I had a different one like every year. I don't like sitting in them. I really don't appreciate cars, but yeah, I've had them, but they're not comfortable. It's like you crawl in them, you lay down like you're in a sleep bag or something, just have your head sticking up, and that's about it. Where trucks, you sit in them like your kitchen table chair, man. You sit there, you sit upright, you can jump right out, jump right in the car, you crawl in, you crawl your way out. What? No. I mean, I haven't bought my wife cars.
I think it's fair to say that Mr. Truck won't be buying the new Corvette anytime soon. That's if they ever put it back into production. One, just to finish off that point about the Ford Maverick, if it does happen, we have stories on that on tfltruck.com, and there's an announcement as well that we posted on TFL now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, yeah, there's a video there, and as well as all kinds of written material on TFL truck and TFL car.
No comment from Ford yet.
Right. Dan Atkinson says if I lift a Camaro, I would need a mullet also. So that could be
Dan,
true.
I kind of thought you had one.
Well, yeah,
Actually,
with the home order, we may all have mullets. I'm going to grow a mullet because I can't.
Yeah, I am too, apparently.
Yes. Oh, you're looking so spiffy today, man. You look like an Amish preacher. I just love that look. Are you going to church after this is over?
Okay, so the truth is, right before we started getting this video together, my wife was next to me, and I was trying to kind of shoo her out so I could get this done. So I just grabbed whatever I could get, and it's cold in here, and it just happened to be a sports coat. But I'm wearing a t-shirt, for crying out loud. So it's not like come on.
Oh, you look spiffy. You are spiffy, dude.
I agree. No, I think Nathan dressed up specifically for the IHS story.
That's what I thought.
Right. That's why I did it. Guys, let's wrap it up with a couple more questions and let everybody go. This has been a good day, though. I do appreciate the fact that we got Russ to come on here. Once again, his name is Russ Rader. Seriously, that is like such a rock and roll name. You wouldn't expect someone to work for insurance who does that. So he really does need a mohawk and a Gibson guitar.
Oh yeah, he could be right. He could be worldwide, the world of wrestling, man. He could be professional at that name. I want to see him do that. That'd be so cool.
We need to rename people.
Pull his t-shirt off. Yeah, you ought to try that with your t-shirt, Nathan. Pull that t-shirt off like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, this is a rare t-shirt. So maybe some other time.
Alex K is asking, any update on the Suzuki, Nathan?
Oh yeah, we actually did talk about it on Monday. If you guys look at Monday's video for what car or truck should I buy, the live broadcast, I'm actually in my garage talking to Andre and holding up parts and showing you guys components that I am in process of putting onto the Suzuki and explaining why I do it, or I am doing it. Hopefully I'm going to have a complete video put together in the next couple of weeks with the components that have gone on it. And then in the near future, once things get a little bit more under control, we're hoping to go out and do some off-roading with the Suzuki, possibly against the Hummer.
Oh, cool. Get all that off-roading done with it. I think we should do our own little crash test with that Suzuki.
No crash testing with my Suzuki.
One to follow up on Jeep story one more time, just one more thing. Jeep and Jax is asking, what headlights did they test IHS in their testing? And I believe they tested at least 2 different headlights, because it has an LED package and a basic package. But you can go to their website and they break it down. And you know how I love data. I just want to dig in there and like look at every little piece of data.
Well, it looked like the headlight went flying off during that crash. Was that part of the test of the headlight?
No, it's a projectile headlights don't matter. Jeeps are notorious for having really crappy headlights. When we had ours for Motor Mountain USA, one of the biggest complaints we had with that Jeep was the fact that we had a really hard time, Andre, I'm sure you remember this, with the brightness and the positioning of the headlights. The good news is aftermarket headlights usually fix that problem. But in this case, it just has to do with safety. So yeah, they should have a detailed list of all the components and how they did on their website.
Yeah, and also I think it's good that they're doing it, and they're doing it in a very precise, controlled way, measuring the light patterns and all this stuff. And they also test even the most luxurious vehicles. And I think that's great, because you would think those pretty LED lights are great, but not according to, not all of them are great. So I think that's really good.
Hey, can I mention one thing about LED lights? And both you guys might appreciate this, because we had an issue with this with a truck. What is the one biggest problem with LED lights in cold weather?
No heat.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, stoplights had that problem. We need to start heating up all the stoplights in the city because of that.
The snow packs on it.
Yeah, the snow and ice builds up on it. And I noticed that with any other headlight, it doesn't happen. Even though LEDs are superior under normal conditions, stuff like that, when you're in super cold weather and you're going through cold weather, we notice that the ice just mounts up on there and it doesn't eventually slip off with the heat of the headlight. And that's just something that we have to get used to because everybody's going to LEDs.
Yeah, that's weird too. I've tested some European horse trailers and they had all these LEDs on it. And some of the European SUVs wouldn't light them up because they didn't have enough juice going to those lights. They had to put an incandescent light inside the horse trailer to get the light connections to actually work on all the LEDs. It was really weird on some of that stuff, but yeah.
Because the LEDs take very little power, so it doesn't cycle through there and understand that it's actually producing power.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah. Ron McKenna, thank you for joining us. The chat room is still very active. We really appreciate it. There's one more prepared question from Neil that sent us an email at ask@tfltruck.com. And Neil was asking about a Ram truck. Neil said he noticed on the online configurator that the new Ram 1500 doesn't have a 2-door cab with an 8-foot bed. And that's true. And he's saying, why is this? And do they want you to buy the 2500 2-door with a long bed? But they do have their classic trucks. So right now what Ram is doing is they're building both trucks at the same time. The classic truck, the previous generation, is the 2-door with a long bed. And that's basically the one of the only configurations, other than they do the Warlock truck also, and a couple of other classic models. And then the new line, the DT generation, the rest of it, you know, there's the quad cab and the crew cab and Rebel and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing they're keeping both models of trucks still going 2 years later. I thought they'd do it for a year, but now they're going on 2 years with the classic.
Yeah, and we reached out to Ram several times through the last, year or two, and they don't have an official statement, at least yet, to when the classic one will be discontinued. I think what they're seeing is that they're able to offer that new truck, you know, the luxurious and expensive models to the customers. And then some people who want value, really affordable trucks, they can offer the classic version of it.
Well, you know, that's a good idea for GM because, you know, so many people complaining about the new GM heavy duty and the look of it. If they would have kept the classic heavy duty, it probably would have sold a few more trucks. But that's something they needed to think about because they just came out in 20, so it's not too late. They can start producing the old truck, and people who don't like the new truck looks can get the old truck.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? I see a lot of new 2020 GM heavy duties running around Denver. So I think they're becoming more popular.
It's just one truck just going round and round, Andre. You're just seeing the same truck.
I don't know. Finally, before we close down, and once again, happy Friday, everybody. Just a quick look forward to what we're doing. Here in TFL Truck, we're going to have 2 videos this weekend. We're going to have an at-home edition about Ram trucks and older Dodge Rams. So that's coming tomorrow. And we also have on Sunday our very popular Truck Madness. So 2nd episode.
Good. I was wondering how the May Madness was doing.
Yes.
Episode 2 coming up.
You know, we received like 31,000 votes on the first episode on our community page. Yeah, I was really impressed. That was really great. Mr. Truck, what are you doing on your channel?
Well, I finally got the Rebel. Took me 3 tries to finally get one delivered. So that's a diesel. I get a kick out of it. We're going to go up to the mountains tomorrow with it and see if I can jump Bunt School with it. But yeah, we've been pulling trailers and going all over the place. I did a tire pressure monitoring system on my new Iron Bolt trailer. Just got that finished, and one on Andrew's horse trailer. So I'll be putting that video together. And next week I get the Expedition and the Ridgeline. My, what a combination, man.
And Nathan, what are some of the videos you recently did or are coming up?
We have a couple of videos that are coming up, including one where I get to discuss something that we don't normally talk about, which is people who are short, who are interested in trucks and what would work best for them. And we talk about a few examples. So that's going to be coming out in a few days. There's also a couple other things that are popping up, including whether or not you should actually buy a 4-wheel drive truck, or just stick with 2-wheel drive, and you'd be surprised how many people should do one over the other. One final thing, Andre, a lot of people out there are still a little confused about Truck Madness, and some don't know that they can be, not only they can, they have to vote. They're the ones who actually vote to see which truck gets where. And it's seeded, guys, so different seeds go up against each other, number 1 seed against number 8 seed type thing. So it may not be a half-ton against a half-ton, but it doesn't really matter. It matters what you vote for, and to see move on to the next and on to the next. So I highly recommend you guys do that to see your favorite truck win.
Nathan, who you calling short?
You know, the funny thing is, Kent, if you look at the staff at TFL Truck, actually TFL in general, everybody is over 6 feet tall, with only a few exceptions.
Come on, 5'8" is like a normal height. I'm a normal guy, not one of the behemoths. Whatever.
No, I know. It's just, well, I'm considered short amongst all the hosts. Even Tommy's as tall as me. Roman and Andre look down at me. We got a guy named Grant, who you know. He's like 6'4". So it's like a lot of tall people, but we don't normally talk about people who are 5'2", 5'3", 5'4", and whatnot. So in this video coming up, I do talk about that.
Well, good, because I got adjustable pedals on my truck. I can fit in anything.
That's awesome. And also on TFL Car, we have a really cool test we call the Loveland Trials, where we put electric vehicles on a mountain road and see how far they can climb and come back down, and how that works. That's coming up this weekend as well. And of course, we have Classics and Off-Road Channel, where Steven has a surprise coming up very soon. He's reviewing a bulldozer.
Yeah, don't tell him anything else though. There's even more to it than that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love bulldozers. I did a D6 for years. I want a D8, man. I want a high track.
I'm telling you guys, we need to get a TFL bulldozer.
Yeah, we should do tug of war with the Suzuki.
Yeah, Suzuki alone, God. So guys, we're going to be back on Monday with What Car or Truck Should I Buy? Same time, same station. So prepare any questions you have, send them to us. And also remember, this video will turn into a regular video a little bit after broadcasting is over, and we'll go back over it and try to answer a few more questions.
Yeah, thank you for all of your feedback and discussion. And Truck Madness, yes, it's all about you guys. We don't affect the vote. You guys affect it. So thank you. We'll see you next time. And of course, next Friday here for the truck show.
Cool.
See you guys.